After Monday's NFL action, we now know that the Baltimore Ravens are going to be facing off against the Houston Texans in the divisional round, and this could be a perfect matchup for the Ravens. We'll talk about why and so much more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, and I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, coming to you from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. As always, thanks so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day. We are free and available all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube and in audio form wherever you get your shows. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs help to find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. It's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Again, be sure to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and also follow along in audio form. 5 days a week, Ravens content Monday through Friday, plus bonus episodes, bonus lives. Rocco DiSangro from Fox 45 and the Ryan Ripken Show joins us now after joining us for a bonus episode on Sunday. We talk about Lamar Jackson's legacy, a ton of great content in there, and a ton of great content today, Rocco, is we played the guessing game on Sunday, didn't we? Where we were trying to figure out who the Ravens are going to play. We recorded that episode before Sunday, and we didn't know any of the playoff games. I listening back to it, we talked up the Browns. That didn't go so well. The Eagles, they're playing right now as we record this, but I think a lot of people had the Steelers losing to Buffalo, and of course with the Texans winning, it means Baltimore is hosting Houston this Saturday.
I wonder how dumb I sounded, just like trying to predict who the Ravens were going to play, not knowing, and just like people that might not have listened to you say like, hey, we're recording this episode a few days before and then listening to it. So I apologize for that. We'll try to be correct on our picks going forward in real time here.
Yeah, again, hopefully we will not be clipped too badly for freezing cold takes. Don't want to end up appearing on that. But I think with this Houston matchup, Rocco, it's one where we had talked about Houston's, I guess, inexperience, and now Houston's won a playoff game. So I guess they have the experience of doing that with CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryans. And when you look up and down the board, considering their 4 matchups were Houston, Cleveland, Miami, or Pittsburgh, Houston, they have the quarterback who I think is playing the best, really. I mean, how many quarterbacks are you taking over CJ Stroud right now? I mean, Lamar's one of them, maybe Mahomes, maybe Allen. But when you talk about matching up Baltimore and Houston, we'll get to it a little bit in the second part of the show as well. I think you have to start with CJ Stroud.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Ravens did a great job of containing CJ Stroud in that first game of the season. But when you look at it, that was the first game of CJ Stroud's young career. And CJ Stroud has grown so much over the course of that time period. I mean, he's turned into such a phenomenal quarterback. And it wouldn't surprise me if he does get some MVP votes. Lamar is my MVP. I'm not saying that he's not, but I think CJ Stroud, he may get some votes because taking a team from where they were with the Texans, winning the division, getting into the playoffs and doing what he did. I mean, the guy's had a fantastic season for a rookie, and he's got such a bright future ahead. And that you're right, man. For the Ravens to win this game, they need to do much of what they did in that first game. It's going to be tough to hold CJ Stroud to 0 touchdowns. I don't see the Ravens doing that, but I do see the defense doing their best job possible in containing CJ Stroud, and I see the Ravens winning this game.
I think so too, and I always say the games are going to be close, and every time I say it, the Ravens just blow their opponent. At least this season, they've blown their opponent out of the water. So I'm going to say it's close, and then I'm going to hope, obviously, Baltimore goes and does the thing, but really interesting wide receiver conversation with Houston too here, Rocco, because I think Baltimore's secondary matches up really well with Houston's offensive weapons because there's no Tank Dell. We learned on Monday Noah Brown was placed on injured reserve as well. So they're down 2 of their top, arguably 3 weapons, maybe 4 if you want to throw Dalton Schultz into that equation. Tank Dell had just about 700, a little over 700 receiving yards this year. Noah Brown right around 550. So that's about 1,200 to 1,300 yards for Houston just out the door. I mean, to me, Nico Collins is the guy. He's their one right now. He's been balling out. He's a player, and it's kind of crazy to have that Ohio State to Michigan connection with CJ and Nico Collins. But other than that, I mean, John Mechie and Robert Woods, Steven Sims, I guess Dalton Schultz too. I feel confident in Baltimore's secondary that it's almost like the Tyreek Hill conversation, right? You know Tyreek Hill can beat you. You know he's the top weapon. Shut him down and let someone else beat you. For me in Houston, it's shut Nico Collins down and let someone else beat you.
Yeah, absolutely. Nico Collins against the Ravens in that opener, he went 6 for 80, 0 touchdowns because, CJ Stroud didn't have a touchdown in that game. But Nico Collins, I mean, he's the guy. He's the guy right now, and he's just been fantastic this season as well. He's clicking at the right time, and he's had a couple really, really good games. And he's CJ Stroud's go-to guy. And with Brown now on IR, you got Tank Dell, who's been done for the year. That is the guy that the Ravens secondary is going to have to key on, take care of, follow all over the field, and make sure that CJ Stroud's not hitting him on big plays. That's a big thing for the Ravens, to limit big plays from Stroud to Nico Collins, because those are two guys that can hurt you, Nico Collins especially, with what he's able to do out there.
Now, here's the thing for me. When you look at the pure box score stats, Rocco, from what Baltimore and Houston did in the regular season, the run game for both the Ravens defense and the Texans offense, if you had to kind of pick an area, Baltimore's, the Ravens have the top passing defense in the league, and they've balled out this year in that regard. And, they're a top 5 passing offense, a top 5 rushing offense. They're the 25th worst, or I guess 25th best, if you want to call it that, against the run, 25th in the league, 4.5 yards per carry given up. Now, that is, I think, a little skewed. They gave up 300 combined yards against Miami and Pittsburgh in the last 2 weeks of the season. They gave up about 170 to Cleveland in week 10. But I do think it's a product of them having some really, really bad games and that skewing the numbers. Now, Houston is not a great rushing offense when you look at the stats, but I think that is also skewed because they were handing the ball off a lot to Dameon Pierce in the early part of the season, who among qualifiers, I think, had the worst or one of the worst yards per carry rates, right around 2.9. They give their backfield to Devin Singletary. So it's going to be really interesting to me to see the Texans rushing offense against the Ravens rushing defense, because if you can shut down that part of the Texans offense and make them one-dimensional, I think that's a success for any defense in any football game. Make an offense one-dimensional, especially against the rookie and CJ Stroud, who's been playing really well, but it takes away an element of your offense.
No, absolutely. And, a lot of the talk heading into the postseason was about the Browns defense, and CJ Stroud, he did a heck of a job. I mean, he torched them. So, but I'm telling you what, man, Baltimore's defense at the bank, they're fresh, they're ready, they're fired up. And this could be a small window for a lot of these guys, the Patrick Queens, the Justin Madubuikes. Obviously, you're hoping that the Ravens potentially franchise tag him or extend him. But Queen, we're unsure about his future here in Baltimore. They know that their time in Baltimore could be running out. You hope that's not the case. I would love to see the Ravens keep Patrick Queen and Madubuike for the long haul. With Madubuike, I think he's going to be a Raven for a very long time. Queen, I'm really, really not sure about what happens after the season. But these guys are fired up, man. They're ready to go. They know it's time. And especially, if they can shut down the run game, like you said, if they can contain it, and if they can take care of Nico Collins, CJ Stroud, this is a game. Regardless of what happens offensively for Houston, I don't see a case scenario where Baltimore loses this game. And that's nothing against Houston. That's nothing against CJ Stroud. That's nothing against DeMeco Ryans. That's nothing against the playmakers. I just think Baltimore is a team that is on a mission right now, defensively, offensively. You talk about locked in. They've been saying that all season long. That's been the motto, the mantra. Lamar Jackson's been talking about it. I mean, for the last couple of weeks, especially. So I think we're going to see a locked in Ravens team on both sides of the ball, especially defensively. They know they got their work cut out for them with CJ Stroud, but I think they're going to handle business out there.
And here we are on Locked On Ravens talking about a locked-in Ravens team, pun intended, 100%. So this is going to be a great game, I think. But part of it is the Ravens and the Texans, they're at two different points where I think you kind of look at Houston and it's the young team, they've found a way to win in the playoffs, and they continue that. It's weird to say because it's not the same, but I see a little bit of the 2019 Ravens in Houston, where, again, it's the younger version. I think this 2023 Ravens team is the grown-up version of the 2019 Ravens, whereas I think this 2023 Houston team, maybe we'll be talking about the 2024 Texans or 2025 Texans. Maybe they go on some improbable run this year, and Rocco, make you and I look like fools on this show. But to me, I feel like, again, it almost be in fact, it would be a disaster if Baltimore were to lose this game, because of the fact I think it's more understandable if, you lose to the experienced Bills who have kind of been in the playoffs multiple times, or the Chiefs who have won multiple Super Bowls. But the Texans are just here now. They're finding their way. And this Ravens team who has looked so good all season, Houston, I just feel like would be a team. And honestly, it'd be that way if it was Pittsburgh, Miami, or Cleveland, right? A divisional round loss would be inexcusable all the way across the board. I think Baltimore knows that too. And so I'm excited to see them hopefully kind of get rid of those demons that they've had in the playoffs these past couple of years.
I think with all the talk about, Lamar's playoff record, this and that, can the Ravens get out of the divisional round? They hear all the noise. And if they do lose to the Texans in the divisional round, I don't even want to throw it out there and put it out there that it can happen, but it's always a possibility. But if they do, players, this fan base, I think everyone in Baltimore would view this season as a failure, regardless of how they finished in the regular season. 13-4 aside, 1 seed first round bye, because this team is capable of so much more. They're so talented, Kevin. You know it. I know it. Fans know it on both sides of the ball with the weapons they have. This is a different, you touched on it, much more mature team than the 2019 season. Lamar is now, 26, 27 years old. He's older. He's not in his second season right now. He's playing at such a high level. And not that he wasn't playing at a high level, and obviously he was unanimous MVP in 2019, but he is what he's able to do in Todd Monken's offense. I mean, he's evolved this season especially. So for the Ravens at this point in time, with where they are and how mature they are, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's like looking at this team and what they have in front of them, what they can accomplish, they know what's at stake, man. And if a Texans team comes in here and beats them, it's not going to look great for this team, for this franchise right here.
It's a nightmare to envision what this show would look like.
Let's throw it out the window, because I know there are going to be fans out there that are already nervous. They're like, oh no, like here we go. But I think you should have high hopes about this game. I think if you're a fan, if you're going to the game, if you're watching on TV, trust in this team, trust in what they do and what they've done to get to this point. And, the whole rust factor and whatnot, they had a much tighter practice schedule during the bye week than they did in 2019. This is a much more focused Ravens team. And they're going to go out, and I really believe that they're going to prove it to everybody that they're for real.
Yeah, and again, playoffs are nerves, right? Everybody gets a little nervous during the playoffs. Because anything can happen. And I think for what do the Texans have to lose here? Right. They've already had a great season. I think gone farther than anybody thought they were going to go this season. They're playing with house money. If they lose the Ravens in the divisional, it's all right, cool. We had a great season, made a ton of strides. Let's go back to the drawing board. If the Ravens lose, it's, oh my, they're the best team in the league. They're one and done again. All these conversations have to happen.
It's going to be,
It's completely different in terms of where these teams are. And that's why I think, again, Texans, I think, are a pretty perfect matchup for the Ravens. And coming up, we'll continue talking about why that is the case. Stay tuned for that. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And for me, I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it's me finding jobs, I've networked, I've connected on there. It's really, really great. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which make it the best place to hire. Hiring's really easy too when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. And maybe you want to achieve some goals in 2024. The right team member might be able to help you do that. That's why small businesses are LinkedIn Jobs #1, delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free on LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Certain conditions apply. We're back, our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with Rocco DiSangro. And Rocco, one interesting part of what I think matches these two teams up and at least gives Baltimore an advantage in the whole thing is partially because when you look at the stats, you look at box scores, but what doesn't pop up on pure box scores? The offensive line. And for Baltimore, there are a lot of questions about the offensive line, especially in the middle part of the season. Ronnie Stanley was really going through it, really struggling, was definitely dealing with some injuries. Morgan Moses, I think the same thing. Now, Tyler Linderbaum and Kevin Zeitler have been pretty rock solid the entire season. John Simpson, I mean, he's been eons better than what I thought he was going to be entering the season. I think even though he's had some ups and downs, but their offensive line, Baltimore's at least, has looked really good over the past month and a half of the season here. I think the rest really benefits guys like Ronnie Stanley and Morgan Moses. Now, do they continue with the tackle rotation? I mean, if it's not broken, I wouldn't fix it. I think if it's working, it's fine. But the Texans do have some players on that defensive line. John Grenard with 12.5 sacks. Will Anderson was just a beast in that Cleveland game. Derek Barnett gets a couple. I mean, that to me is the matchup that I want to watch. It's Baltimore's offensive line against Houston's defensive line.
Yeah, Will Anderson, I covered him at Alabama, and that dude is, I mean, one of the guys you mentioned, he's a stud. And he was picked where he was picked because people viewed him as the best defensive player in the draft. And I think he's starting to show people like how good he really can be when he reaches his full potential. And he's not even there yet, which is the crazy part. So the Ravens, their offensive line is going to have their hands full with Will Anderson, other guys on the defensive line. But I think this rest is really going to benefit those guys. Obviously with the practice schedule, they're trying to gear up, stay as healthy as possible. And the injury report will be telling when that comes out. We'll know more like, okay, what guys are truly banged up this week? Because when we saw that like long CVS receipt list of injury report, like all the players that were on that list during the Steelers game, it was like, it looked like the sky was falling. But what we realized, okay, the Ravens have the 1 seed locked up. They have the first round bye locked up. They're probably going to rest some guys. Some guys are, they're definitely banged up on the injury report. But now it will really be telling like who's banged up, who's ready to go, and who's ready to handle this Texans defensive line and their defense as a whole. Yeah.
And it's really key because Baltimore, we know they're the third best rushing offense in the league, but Houston has the second best rushing defense in the league. But one of the ways I think the Ravens can attack the Texans is by running the football early and establishing that, because then you can work off play action with that. The Texans will have to start stacking the box a little bit. They'll start creeping their safeties closer, and they will bite on some of those. And with the way Lamar Jackson's been slinging the ball, hopefully Zane's healthy enough to go in this one. I know John Harbaugh expressed certain levels of optimism, different levels of optimism for certain players as opposed to other ones. But at this point, I think that it just you can work off of certain things. And with the way Gus, I think he's slowing down a little bit, but he still, I think, can make some stuff happen. Justice Hill has looked electric pretty much the entire season. I know Keaton Mitchell kind of came in there and took his job for about 2 months, but he's stepped up. And then I think the big question is Dalvin. I mean, what is Dalvin Cook's role going to look like? Rocco, do you think Dalvin is going to have an extensive role come Saturday against the Texans?
What's today? Today is Monday, and they have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to practice. And Dalvin Cook's been with the team for a week. He's gotten a week of practice under his belt. I think we are going to see some Dalvin Cook. It really would not surprise me. Now, I could be completely wrong, but it would not surprise me if we see Dalvin Cook in the next 3 games. If I don't want to, jinx the Ravens right now, but divisional round, AFC championship, and then Super Bowl if the Ravens get there. I think Dalvin Cook, you don't sign him and bring him in here. He could be looked at as like a safety blanket or some depth to the running back room. But this is a guy that is 1 year removed from being an 1,100-yard back. And when he was with the Jets, Breece Hall was getting a lot of those opportunities. I really, truly think that Dalvin Cook can help the Ravens in more ways than he can hurt the Ravens. So I think we're going to see some Dalvin Cook in the divisional round, maybe a practice squad elevation. He gets on there and gets some reps. I don't know how big his workload would be if he comes up and does come in. Maybe he gets a few carries. Maybe he gets a lot of carries. Maybe John Harbaugh and Todd Monken kind of gauge that depending on what they think Dalvin Cook can actually bring in this game. But I really do think we're going to see Dalvin Cook out there on the field.
Yeah, and a shameless plug for Monday's show. We had Dalvin Cook's agent on, and he talked a little bit about what he expects his role to be. And again, he wouldn't say what it's going to be, but he said he's excited for it, and the rest of the Ravens flock's going to have to find out later. So reading into some comments, maybe Dalvin's going to have a big role here. So
the silence is telling right there. If he's not saying it, it could be bigger than we expect.
Yeah, so I'm looking. Look, 4-time Pro Bowler, 4 straight Pro Bowls, and again, the Jets, their offensive line was putrid this year. Once Aaron Rodgers went down, it seemed like they just wanted to kind of hand the future over to Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson and just see what they had. These numbers Dalvin had were the worst ever, like even worse than his rookie season. But I don't think that tells the story. I don't think it's Dalvin's washed and everything. Dalvin he has the track record. He had it in Minnesota. I just don't think the Jets were the right fit, and I think Baltimore is a fit for him.
I know that running backs shelf lives, they're not the longest out of football players. Like they may be some of the shortest out of the position, the skill players. But Dalvin Cook, I just don't see him just falling off 1 year removed, like we just talked about, having a 1,000+ yard season with the Vikings. I really do think Dalvin Cook can help this team. And with Aaron Rodgers, when he came in, all the questions were like, all right, how's Dalvin Cook? Like the Jets paid him that amount of money for a reason. They thought Dalvin Cook could truly help the Jets out. But when Aaron Rodgers goes down, when he tears his Achilles, that kind of threw a wrench in the whole thing. That screwed everything up because now you're looking at, okay, an offense with Aaron Rodgers and Dalvin Cook to an offense with Zach Wilson and Dalvin Cook. And then it turned into an offense with Zach Wilson and Breece Hall and other guys at the quarterback position. So it kind of got crazy over there in New York. But like I said, I don't doubt what Dalvin Cook can bring to the table here in Baltimore. I don't think Eric DeCosta, with the signings especially that he's made this season, Kyle Van Noy, Jadeveon Clowney, other guys, is going to bring in a Dalvin Cook unless he thinks he can truly help the Ravens out and compete and contend for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, if there was a year to doubt Eric DeCosta, it is not this one. Not this one.
Not at all.
Almost every single move. Really, I think the Rocky Ya-Sin one is probably the most disappointing. Other than that, I mean, he's probably hit every single one, nail on the head. So incredible offseason / in-season signings for him. But Rocco, let's speculate for a second. We did a lot of that on the bonus episode, so we're no strangers to it over here. The Ravens make a couple roster moves on Monday. They waive Laquan Treadwell, and they put Pepe Williams back on injured reserve. Now, I identify 4 players as candidates, at least, to take up roster spots. We know Mark Andrews came back to practice on Friday. We can speculate about that all we want to. I don't know if he'll be back or not, but he's an option. Ardarius Washington maybe is another guy you could put back on the roster after he was designated. Maybe you put Dalvin Cook on the active roster, although I'm maybe just see him as a practice squad elevation. And then Devin Duvernay seems like probably the most likely to take up a roster spot here. They have 2 open ones right now. Which 2 Ravens you expecting to be back on the roster here, maybe as soon as Tuesday?
Is this a curveball you said you were going to throw me?
No, that's still coming.
Right. That's coming up. I think Duvernay is going to be one. You're probably going to see him, go back on the active roster, get moved there because he's back at practice. He was doing his thing last week. I don't know about Andrews. It will be, this week of practice, it'll depend on what he does participation-wise, because on Friday he was going through the individual drills. That's really all he did. Saturday they had an hour and a half practice at M&T Bank Stadium, but I don't know if that seemed like it was probably more than a walkthrough, or more like a walkthrough, getting guys accustomed to that and just going to M&T Bank Stadium and getting them in that mindset. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think Cook is going to be used as why wouldn't you use him as a practice squad elevation if you can? So I'll go with Devin Duvernay and we'll go with Ardarius as well.
Yeah, it's going to be weird because you would say, oh, well, you want to use, I think Melvin's probably an inactive in these situations if you want to do that and you want to put Dalvin up. But yeah, I think Ardarius, because I just don't know if Andrews is ready yet. I would maybe, and I'm no doctor, but I think that maybe AFC Championship, maybe if you want that extra week, if you make the Super Bowl, get them that extra week of rest and have that final reinforcement. That could be an option that they have as well. So plenty of options for the Ravens, a couple of roster spots with flexibility. Coming up, though, we'll be rounding out the show, continuing to talk about the Texans and how they match up with the Ravens and vice versa. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and the NFL regular season is all wrapped up, but the playoffs are in full swing, and there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets into a Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and so much more. So for the Ravens and Texans divisional round matchup, maybe you want to put together a parlay as a likely, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham anytime touchdown. The possibilities over there are endless. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown. Make it first by the layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And this episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. And I know we come to sports to escape some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute about actually preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That's pretty scary, and I can imagine a more helpless feeling than if someone I cared about got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication they needed. Thankfully, it'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat long lists of bacterial infections and illnesses like UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit JaseMedical.com. Complete your physician encounter will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medication will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to JaseMedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON and get $20 off your order. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, Rocco DiSangro coming at you on a Tuesday, a Taco Tuesday. If that is every Tuesday, it's Taco Tuesday here on Locked On Ravens. But Rocco, this whole episode, we haven't talked about Lamar Jackson at all. And I think it's funny because we're kind of looking and we're talking about CJ Stroud. What does this mean? What does that mean? But we know the player Lamar is. We talked about him a lot for the bonus episode. Second MVP. I mean, that's coming down the docket here. Who knows if he's going to win the Super Bowl, but if he does, that's going to affect his legacy. But some of these words that kind of come to mind when you're talking about Lamar, and some of the words I want to come to mind, hopefully when we're done with this whole run for Lamar. I mean, leader, ring, banner, championship, this whole thing. I think what you want to associate Lamar with that stuff, the first thing Lamar has to do, it's not all his fault, but the playoff record is going to come up. I think this game against Houston is the one where he can start to kind of buck these trends and get them off of his shoulders. Not that they're weighing him down, but he's certainly excited to be in these moments and be healthy for him.
He's pumped up. And you could even tell with him talking to Tom Brady on his podcast, just the player you've seen him become this year. Not that Lamar Jackson wasn't a great player before, one of the best players in the NFL, but to do what he's doing again and to go out there, lead his team, and be a game changer like we all know Lamar Jackson is capable of being. And the key to him winning an MVP and winning a Super Bowl is being healthy. There were a lot of critics and people that said Lamar Jackson couldn't stay healthy. Health was an issue. And maybe that's why I don't know why teams passed on him in free agency or, trying to go after him and, sign him to an offer sheet. But I mean, honestly, that's kind of crazy to me. But looking at Lamar Jackson and what he's done this season and how he's evolved in Todd Monken's offense, we talked about that earlier, how he's evolved as a leader, how he's evolved as someone, you see the videos from when Ravens do their wired, after they score the touchdown, after they go up big, he's just like, no, we're not done. We're not done. It's like, we got to stay locked in. We got to keep our focus. That's what I love to see from Lamar Jackson. But the key really is him being healthy, him being out there, because that's something he wasn't able to do towards the end of the last 2 seasons. He was not healthy to finish either of the last 2 seasons. So to have Lamar Jackson out there healthy, to have Lamar Jackson leading the way, conducting the offense, doing what he does best, and changing the games, that's what the Ravens need the most. And that's not necessarily why we're seeing a more locked in Lamar Jackson. I think with the contract being out of the way, believe what you want. He can say what he wants, but I do believe that was a distraction for everyone. Not in a bad way, but that's all everyone talked about leading up to it. It was like, all right, when is Lamar Jackson going to sign? What's his future look like? Now we know what Lamar Jackson's future looks like here in Baltimore, but he can make the most of his own future in potentially winning some hardware down the line. Not just an MVP I'm talking about, but what did the guy say when he got drafted? What did he want to bring Baltimore? Wanted to bring him a Super Bowl. That was one of the first things he said in that interview with Deion Sanders. They're going to get a Super Bowl out of me. All right, Lamar, it's your time to prove it. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but he wants to do that as much as everyone here, this fan base, wants him to. So I truly believe that Lamar Jackson is going to do that this season. I know we're looking ahead right now. It's the divisional round. They got to get past this first. But I've said it time and time again, man. I've talked with you. I've talked with other people. The only team that I see beating the Ravens right now is the Ravens. They went through that gauntlet and they passed that test. They're here. Playoff mode activated.
Yeah, well, 1,000%. And you kind of talk about, Houston and it being a perfect matchup for the Ravens in a lot of areas. you look back at that week 1 game, and Lamar, looking over some of these stats is so funny. Roquan Smith had 16 tackles in this game. So talking about starting the season off with a bang. And then Brandon Stevens had 12. Queen had 11. But Baltimore had 5 sacks in this game. And the Texans' offensive line was a little beat up in this one. But Roquan had a sack. Or Darius Washington had a sack. He was playing. This was the start of Jase Medical season 2. He had one. For David Ajabo. I mean, we're throwing out names here. But the key thing that I'm looking at is Zay Flowers had 10 targets in this game. There was no other Raven that had more than 3. I think when you talk about how this offense has evolved from week 1, we talk about how the Texans are a different team, but the Ravens are also a different team. You see guys like Isaiah Likely and, Rashad Bateman stepping into the fold. And I think Lamar is just spreading the ball out more. And I think that is the best thing for this offense right now because Zay can do work. We know Zay can do work. But I think that even if it's not a high volume passing game, Lamar only threw the ball 22 times in this one. Even if he's throwing it 25 times, 26 times, he's now, I think, established more of a connection, more of a rapport with more of the receivers. And that to me is a key come playoff time, especially against the Texans secondary that has players on it, but I'm not necessarily super sold on.
No, I would agree with you there. And with Lamar, man, like looking at those stats, him going 17 of 22, which isn't bad but for just like 169 yards and a pick. And then he ran 6 times for 38 yards. This was the game afterwards. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember just the fan base, like, what's this offense here? It's like we can be better than this. And then there were some questions about this Todd Monken offense. And there were some more questions about the Todd Monken offense. And it's just like at times you have to be patient, and it's so hard to be patient because you hear all these good things about Todd Monken's offense in the offseason, how he's going to change everything, how he's going to take the Ravens to new heights offensively, and it's going to be like night and day from what Greg Roman kind of ran his offense. But like at times it was like, all right, when's this going to happen? When's this going to happen? And then it finally did. And now you're seeing that. Now you're seeing what a Todd Monken-led offense, Lamar Jackson leading the way, those two just clicking. I feel like, it's really cool to see, man, to see these guys just like Monken dials it up, Lamar executes it, and sometimes if a play breaks down, Lamar's doing his own thing. It's like on the playground. He's like with that Isaiah Likely play against the Jaguars where they had him contained, they had him locked up, and he goes around, he ducks down, he breaks a tackle, and he just tosses it up to Likely. Like, I love that from Lamar Jackson. And what you're seeing with the Ravens offense is what Todd Monken, what Lamar Jackson, what this offense fully is capable of. And I think the Texans are going to struggle with that because love or hate Joe Flacco, I feel like a lot of people here truly do love Joe Flacco. They still really care about him, and he's going to be, in the Ring of Honor one day here at M&T Bank Stadium. And, he brought this city a Super Bowl, but Joe Flacco is not Lamar Jackson. We know that. Joe Flacco is not nearly as mobile as Lamar Jackson. What Lamar can do with his legs, what Lamar can do with his arm, it's special. So the Texans, while they did see it already this season, it was early. And I give the advantage to the Ravens and Lamar because just like the Texans, you've seen the Ravens evolve over time since that very first game.
Yeah, 2 teams that looked a lot different in week 1 than they're going to look in the divisional round. So let's round out the show, Rocco, with the same question that I kind of asked you to start off the show, but in a different way. Overall, how are you feeling about the Ravens matchup with the Texans? On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you feeling?
I'll give it an 8. I'll give it an 8. I don't want to give it a 10. I don't want to give anything a 10, but let's go 8.5. Let's go 8.5. Honestly, I feel really good about it. I don't know how the fan base feels. I think they feel pretty good, but there's always that question of, okay, the rust factor. How are these guys going to respond coming off the bye week? How are these guys going to respond? Is there going to be any rust factor? We've looked at the games, the bye week they came off of, they won that game. I know it wasn't the prettiest win. We looked at when they came back from London, they absolutely dominated the next game, and there was probably some jet lag there as well. My confidence in the Ravens is very high because on the offensive side of the ball, you have a guy like Lamar Jackson, locked in Lamar. We're going to start calling him. Then on the defensive side of the ball, you have a leader like Roquan Smith, and you didn't have that in 2019. You didn't have a Roquan Smith on your team. And this is a guy, listening to him in the locker room, man, listening to some of the stuff he says, I want to run through a brick wall for them. So, like, when the Ravens get on the field ahead of the, whether it's like, I don't know, like 3:30, 3:45 leading up to that 4:30 game, when Roquan Smith breaks them down for the final time, you're going to see how fired up these guys are. And I think they're going to come out and they're going to punch the Houston Texans in the mouth.
Yeah, I don't know how many fans feel this way, and this is kind of how I'm feeling, but with the whole rest versus rust thing, if the Ravens win this one, I think a lot of people will feel a lot more relieved because it's okay. They won the game. Now they've played a playoff game. There's no rust. So I feel like a lot of people are nervous for this one. One, because of how 2019 went, but two, just to kind of get it out of the way. And then everything will kind of fall into place after that. So I don't know. It's kind of how I'm feeling, where it's like, if they can do this thing, they can do anything. If they can win this one, they can win any game. So that to me is kind of, I don't know, just kind of how I'm feeling a little bit.
Yeah, but look at the teams and the quarterbacks they beat in the stretch, down the stretch with Herbert, with Stafford, with Lawrence, with Brock Purdy and the 49ers and their potent offense and how good they were, then just dominating the Dolphins and Tua. And then I know they lost the last game, but half their starters didn't even play in that game because they were resting guys up. So it doesn't concern me. I'm not trying to discredit CJ Stroud. He's a fantastic quarterback. DeMeco Ryans is a fantastic head coach, and they've done a great job. And I really think the Texans, they have a bright future in the league. And it's really cool to see because of where they were, and the turnaround story is so cool. But Baltimore doesn't want to be a part of that. The Ravens want no parts of that Cinderella, that turnaround story. They want to go out there and dominate these guys, and that's exactly what I think they're going to do.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think Lamar, CJ Stroud, two of the bright young quarterbacks in this league. Going to be a really good matchup. M&T Bank, Saturday, 4:30 Eastern. Rocco, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hopping back on with me. Hopefully no freezing cold takes this time around. Tell people where they can find you, what you're working on, and what you have coming up here.
All right. You can watch me on Fox 45 if you have local TV. If you have cable, tune in. We do Sports Unlimited, Morgan Adsit and myself. And then along with Kevin, Ryan Ripken and I and Brad Smith, Zach Bollinger, we all do the Ryan Ripken Show. So we have an episode coming out Tuesday, Thursday. You can tune into that. We broadcast live on YouTube and whatnot. So Kevin, you could probably tell them, or you're better versed in the YouTube world than I am. So I'm still a rookie.
Links will be in the description below for that one. It's been fun. It's been fun. Rocco and I are the short kings of that show. So that's our claim to fame. That's why they keep us around.
Man. We still have to do like a back-to-back measurement, see who's taller. I think you might have me beat, though. I'm kind of scared. But you know what? If it happens, it is what it is.
We're always in studio the day that the other isn't. So we haven't been able to get it. One day we will, though. Maybe it'll be this week. I'm not sure yet. But links again to Rocco's work in the description below. Thanks so much for tuning in to Locked On Ravens today. Coming up tomorrow, of course, we'll be back here talking more Texans and Ravens as they're matching up divisional round Saturday, 4:30 M&T Bank. So be sure to stay tuned for that. See you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.